The ARCs were originally founded by groups of family members who envisioned a different life for their family members that had disabilities. They wanted their family members to have increased access to services, to have more inclusion in their communities, to kind of move away from the institutions of the past and more fully integrate people with disabilities into their communities that they lived in. So the ARC Central Chesapeake region is no different from that. We were founded by a group of family members in Anne Arundel County who wanted their children to be more included in the Anne Arundel County public school system. So they worked and advocated on their behalf to achieve that. And here we are all these years later. The ARC Central Chesapeake region not only covers Anne Arundel County, but the entire Eastern Shore except for Cecil County. And very similar to the parents back in the 1960s, the ARC Central Chesapeake region, Port Street Commons, is all about creating more access and opportunities for not only people with disabilities, but for the town of Easton and the Midshore. So historically, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities historically struggle to access critical health services, connect with their communities fully, and live a life of their choosing. So with that being said, and in identifying the Midshore as a place that we want to create our permanent Eastern Shore headquarters, a lot of that ties into it. There's not very many disability providers on the shore, so creating more access. Our goal is by 2025 to increase services and supports by 60% and support over 150 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So through Port Street Commons, the ARC will be able to provide greater access to services and resources so that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in our communities can live, work, and connect with people of their choosing and basically live the lives that they choose, just like you and I. The way that the ARC and Chesapeake Neighbors are going to do that are kind of four distinct things. The first would be providing additional access to different community resources. The second would be providing space for innovative services. The third will be providing access to mental health services, which is so needed, in particular for people with disabilities. And then the fourth will be what you mentioned, the access to additional affordable housing in the community. The access to affordable housing, Port Street Commons will have 9 affordable housing units, of which there will be 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units, 2 of which will be universally designed, so fully ADA accessible and compliant. And we actually have a partnership with Talbot Interfaith Shelter where they will actually manage 2 of the units at Port Street Commons. And with that, they will be able to support 2 people that have gone through their program and provide them rent for up to a year. So this will be a great community resource and partnership that we've developed as far as that goes. When it comes to mental health services, the ARC during the pandemic really saw a need for increasing availability to mental health counseling for people with disabilities. A lot of people during that time were experiencing grief and loss of family members for the first time. For people with disabilities, routines are very important, and their lives were totally upended during the pandemic. So seeing that, we saw an opportunity to create more support and services for people with disabilities in the areas that we serve. And luckily, we've gotten support from our federal delegation, Senators Cardin and Ben Holland and others, to expand the behavioral health supports. Port Street Commons will host a behavioral health clinic, and through that, our clinicians will provide trauma-informed approach to behavioral health services. A lot of the times in the past for people with disabilities, it was a one-size-fits-all behavioral support plan, didn't really get to the heart of their issues or concerns, and we've kind of changed that narrative and trying to get to the root cause of what's causing their mental health challenges. One thing that's distinct about our mental health services is that regardless of disability provider, it will be a resource for the community. The only requirement is that the person has both a mental health diagnosis as well as a co-occurring disability. So, someone who meets that criteria, doesn't necessarily receive support from the ARC, would be able to utilize that. The third thing that I mentioned would be the space for innovative services. So that would include community access to our family navigation program, which could help families in the schools, in our communities, navigate the IEP process for their child with disabilities, make them aware of different services and supports that are available to them until they are of age to receive services from the ARC. We'll be able to host different support groups, group counseling in these spaces. There will be a community hub that will not only be open to the people we support, but to the community as well. So we would host some job fairs there. We would host networking events for different employers as far as providing jobs for the people we support. A lot of different community-based programs. We have a self-advocacy group called Living Boldly, which is totally made up of people with disabilities, and they meet twice monthly to discuss different issues and topics that are important to them. Anything from financial well-being to mental health issues to educational opportunities, work opportunities for them. They decide what they want to discuss. So this would be a space for them to have those meetings there. And then the fourth would be different community resources. So what would that look like? Our professional development center that will be at Port Street Commons will be able to host up to 100 people. In the town of Easton, there's really not a lot of spaces where different community groups, civic organizations, and other organizations can host meetings of that size. So the ARC is going to be partnering with different community groups and organizations to be able to host different meetings and events there. As long as we're not having our trainings or whatever, it'll be an open resource for the community. Some other innovative services that I mentioned is the family navigation, the Family Fund, which is a program that we have for families that have children or family members with disabilities. The Family Fund basically is a fund that covers anything that may not be covered by insurance, so special therapies, devices. The ARC helps kind of close that gap to be able to get access to those. So those are really 4 distinct ways that we hope to provide access to additional services and opportunities for not only the people we support, but the town of Easton and the Midshore as a whole.